So, what do you do when someone just completely bombards you with unsolicited advice? I mean, we have absolutely all been there, right? You're going through this major life transition. Maybe you've just retired, switched careers, or moved to a brand new city, and suddenly, out of nowhere, you start getting these well-meaning but completely misaligned messages from an acquaintance or a former colleague. All of a sudden, they're telling you exactly what to do, what books you should be reading, and basically how to live your life. It feels incredibly intrusive. So how do you actually handle that massive barrage of information without losing your mind or, starting a completely unnecessary and draining argument?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating real-world case study to dive deep into the psychology behind boundary setting. We're going to explore this concept of emotional reciprocity, the actual true meaning of personal cultivation, and most importantly, how to effectively protect your peace when someone else decides that your life needs their management.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the message bombardment.
Picture this. You have literally just retired. You've finished your final checkout at the university, you've finally cleared out your desk, and you are so ready to celebrate this second life of travel and just pure rest. But instead of peace and quiet, your phone just starts lighting up continuously. And it's not a simple, hey, congratulations. No, a colleague named Lee Yude fires off over 10 messages in a single day. Just look at this timeline. In the morning, you get a barrage of health and exercise videos. By midday, he's sending completely unprompted updates about his own work schedule. And by the afternoon, he is pushing esoteric inner alchemy books, name-dropping Carl Jung, and demanding that you master the Taoist microcosmic orbit because, well, nothing says happy first day of retirement quite like a mandatory reading assignment on ancient mysticism, right? For someone who is just trying to enjoy day one of absolute freedom and zero structure, this rapid-fire delivery of heavy, demanding content is just incredibly overwhelming.
Moving on to Section 2, emotional versus informational reciprocity.
Now, it would be super easy to just label a sender like this as toxic or controlling or even aggressively boundary pushing. But let's take a step back and look at the psychological breakdown here, because it's really interesting. There is a massive difference between emotional reciprocity and informational reciprocity. Emotional reciprocity is when you truly share feelings. You hear someone is retiring, you mirror their joy, you say, wow, I am so incredibly happy for you, and you let their emotion genuinely touch you. That requires vulnerability. Informational reciprocity, on the other hand, is exactly what Lee Yude is doing. He's using intellectual content, sharing links, throwing out theories, and giving uninvited advice as a way to try and maintain a relationship. But it's based on the exchange of data rather than the exchange of actual feelings. It's basically a substitute for vulnerability, a way to stay connected without ever having to get emotionally involved.
There's actually this beautiful psychological framing for this, inspired by Dostoevsky. Every person loves with their own poverty. And honestly, this requires some profound empathy on our part. You see, Lee Yude might not actually be trying to control the narrative or deliberately ruin his colleague's first day off. Instead, his poverty is a lack of emotional vocabulary. Sharing these dense books and wild theories might literally be the only language he has to say, hey, I'm glad you're still in my life. So he compensates for that emotional scarcity with a huge wealth of information.
Which brings us to Section 3, redefining spiritual practice.
Look, even with all that empathy for the sender, getting a dense text about dragon and tiger alchemy when you literally just want to sip a cup of coffee and relax, yeah, that feels incredibly unaligned. And this clash actually prompts a massive paradigm shift in how we view personal growth. The sender assumes that cultivation means mastering esoteric Taoist practices or studying these complex texts to elevate the mind. But the real goal here is something called situational cultivation. This just means mastering the present moment you are actually in. For a newly retired person, true practice isn't about achieving some mystical energy state. It's simply about adapting to a new, unstructured reality, finally learning how to rest, and just existing without a constant driving agenda.
The core realization here is actually pretty simple, but it's a total game changer. True cultivation is simply putting your current life in order, making it happy, pleasant, and balanced. Allowing yourself to exist without turning your retirement into another grueling research project or some competitive spiritual ladder is, in fact, a profound psychological practice all on its own. It's really about honoring the reality of your current phase of life, rather than trying to escape it into the realm of theory. Understanding this gives you the absolute permission to just be.
Let's look at Section 4, the psychological anti-drone.
So how on earth do we protect this newfound peace without sparking a bitter argument? Well, we use a brilliant psychological boundary tool, the anti-drone electronic gun. Think of an unsolicited message packed with its own heavy agenda as a literal drone that just suddenly entered your private mental airspace.
It's buzzing around, it's loud, it's demanding your attention, and it's trying to dictate your focus. Now, you don't use this tool to blow up the sender. You use it to jam the signal. You completely neutralize the intrusive message by simply cutting off its pull on your attention. You don't debate the merits of the alchemy book, you don't explain why you aren't reading it, and you certainly don't engage in a back-and-forth text war. You just gently but very firmly drop your attention away from it.
The absolute crucial point here is recognizing that there are two very different ways to just not reply. First, there's punitive silence. This is where you ignore someone specifically to punish them, to make them feel anxious, or to try and win some silent war. The big problem with punitive silence is that it keeps you tied to the conflict. You're basically constantly checking your phone to see if they're suffering yet. Then there is protective silence. This is the anti-drone gun. You ignore the messages purely to protect your own peace and your own attention. You leave the sender's anxiety right there with the sender, and you successfully reclaim your mental territory without firing a single shot.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Designing Your Second Life.
By safely jamming these distractions with protective silence, you can finally focus your energy on what actually matters. You stop playing defense and you start playing offense with your own time. So here are the 4 actionable steps for this grounded situational cultivation. Step 1 is settling, allowing your time, your space, and your body to just find a new stable rhythm after a lifetime of constant work. Step 2 is differentiating. This is where you actively refuse to let other people's theories or anxieties dictate your next steps. Step 3 is playing, and this one is so vital. It means traveling, eating, or just taking a walk without feeling the need to turn those experiences into productive tasks or some grand self-improvement project. And finally, step 4 is generating. Don't rush to plan out your entire second life right away. Just allow a new, organic direction to grow completely naturally from this place of peace and rest.
I want to leave you with this final, really provocative inner declaration. I respect others' paths, but I don't need to make them mine. Uninvited advice can pass right through your field of vision, but it absolutely doesn't have to enter your life. So the next time you find an unsolicited drone buzzing around in your mental airspace, are you going to waste your energy fighting it, or will you use protective silence to get back to designing your own reality? The choice is yours. Keep protecting your peace,